The forest kingdom breathes in silence. Welcome to Fantasy Journeys. Chapter 5. The Woman at the Water Channel. She was older than Lira had expected, and younger than the structures around her. That was the first impression, and it persisted past the first impression into something more considered. The woman's hair was white, not the white of illness or of sudden shock, but the white of something that had been moving in a consistent direction for a long time and had arrived. Her face had the quality of old maps. The lines of it were information, not damage. She stood without any posture of display, weight distributed evenly, hands at her sides. She was wearing something grey-green that was the exact color of the lichen on the north-facing stones. Whether this was coincidence or intention, Lira could not determine. She was looking at them the way people looked at things they had been expecting for a long time without knowing the specific date of arrival. Nobody spoke. Lira did not speak because she did not know what language was wanted, or whether language was wanted at all. Cael did not speak because Cael rarely filled silences that were doing something useful on their own. The woman looked at Lira, then at Cael, then at the horses, and here something changed slightly in her expression. Not surprise, more like recognition of a specific detail in a thing she had already recognized. Her attention moved to Fen with a quality of interest that was unhurried and thorough, the way she might look at a plant she had not seen in this valley before, but knew from elsewhere. Then she turned and walked, not away, at an angle, parallel to the cliff face, back in the direction of the largest of the channel systems. She walked at a pace that was neither slow enough to be performative, nor fast enough to suggest urgency. The pace of someone going somewhere they went often. She did not look back. Cael's hand found the bay's rein and gathered it loosely. He glanced at Lira. She shrugged slightly, a gesture that was less uncertainty than acknowledgement of the obvious. They followed. The path she took was one Lira would not have found on her own. It ran between the cliff face and a dense growth of something tall and narrow that she recognized now, up close, as a type of fern she had never seen reaching this height. 6 feet, perhaps more, the fronds heavy with moisture that caught the valley light and distributed it in small bright points. The path between the fern and the stone was narrow enough that the fronds brushed her right arm as she passed, leaving a dampness on her sleeve that was cold and slightly resinous. She touched it to her tongue without thinking. Mineral, faintly green, not unpleasant. The woman ahead moved through the ferns without contact, in a path through them so specific that her body did not disturb a single frond. She had walked this exact line enough times that she knew precisely where to place her shoulders. The path emerged at the elevated channel, closer to it than Lira had managed from the valley floor side, because from here they were at the channel's own level, the path having gained elevation gradually and without announcement. The channel here was not moving. It held still in a basin where 3 tributaries met before the grade shifted and the water began its lateral progress across the valley. The basin was perhaps 8 feet across, perfectly circular, its walls cut to a depth and smoothness that collected the valley's reflected light and held it just below the surface, so that the water appeared to be producing its own illumination from within. Cold light, pale and even. The woman knelt at the basin's edge. She reached into the sleeve of her grey-green garment and produced a vessel, not large, perhaps the size of 2 cupped hands, made from something dark that absorbed light rather than reflecting it. She lowered it into the basin and waited for it to fill, watching the water with the same thorough attention she had given Fen. She stood. She crossed to Lira and held the vessel out. There was nothing performative in the gesture. No flourish, no formality, the way you offered water to someone who had been walking. Lira took the vessel in both hands. It was heavier than it looked, and warmer than the surrounding air, and the material, she realized, was not ceramic or wood, but stone. A very dense stone, worked thin enough to be functional while remaining the color and weight of depth. She drank. The water was the same cold mineral taste she had found in the channel below, but here it was more concentrated. The meeting point of 3 sources rather than one, each contributing something, the combination reaching a clarity that seemed more than the sum of its parts. She drank the vessel to its last, and the cold of it traced the full length of her throat. She handed it back. The woman took it, rinsed it in the basin with one practiced rotation of her wrist, and crossed to Cael. He took the vessel with both hands the way Lira had, and drank without speaking, and when he returned it, he held the woman's gaze for a moment with an expression Lira recognized from the times he stopped and crouched to read the soil. The expression of someone encountering data that didn't match the categories they arrived with, and responding not with resistance, but with the careful dismantling of those categories. The woman accepted the vessel and turned back to the basin. She set it down at a specific point on the channel's lip, with the finality of something being returned to its correct position. Then she looked at the water for a moment, with her hands resting flat on the stone beside it. Her hands, Lira noticed, were remarkable. The knuckles were large from years of work, and the palms were marked at specific points with the kind of callus that came not from general labor, but from repeated contact with one particular thing. The same handle, the same tool, the same motion performed daily, until the body had accommodated itself to the work, and the work had accommodated itself to the body. The index finger of her right hand curved very slightly inward, permanently, as if shaped around something she no longer held. A specific instrument, Lira thought. Long use of a specific instrument. Beside the basin, arranged along a low shelf of stone that extended from the cliff face, were tools. She had not noticed them on arrival because they were the color and texture of the stone itself, a set of implements of varying sizes, each one worn to the smoothness of long handling, each one placed with the precision of things that had a position and were in it. She could not identify the function of most of them. One was clearly a cutting tool, a worked edge, very fine, set into a handle of something she couldn't name from this distance. Another was a smoothing implement of some kind, broad and flat, with a rounded end. A third was entirely unfamiliar, a curved form with notches at irregular intervals, the purpose of which she could not determine from looking. She wanted to draw them. She had not brought drawing materials on this journey. Maps only, and her journal, and the want was sharp enough that she felt it in her hand, the index finger pressing against nothing. The woman straightened. She looked at the sky, at the canopy overhead, at the quality of the light, making some assessment about time that Lira could not read. Then she looked at the horses. She crossed to Fen with the same direct, unhurried efficiency she brought to everything. Fen watched her come without alarm, ears half forward, nostrils working. She did not swing her head away. She did not step back. The woman stopped at the correct distance, slightly further than Lira would have stood, slightly closer than a stranger would, and held her hand up, palm outward, not offering contact, but presenting the smell of herself. Fen considered this for a moment, and then extended her nose the remaining distance and breathed against the woman's palm for several long seconds. The woman watched Fen with complete attention. Then she lowered her hand and moved to the bay, who accepted the same introduction with less deliberation and more appetite, pressing his nose into the offered palm with enthusiasm. The woman made a single sound, the first sound she had made in their entire encounter, not a word, more like the start of a word or the sound of breath with specific shape. The bay lifted his head and looked at her. Cael made a small noise in his throat. Lira glanced at him. His expression had shifted. The cataloguing expression softened into something that was harder to name. He was watching the woman with the bay with the quality of attention he gave to things that moved him, which he never announced and rarely showed. The woman returned from the horses and stood before them both. She looked at the map tube at Lira's side, not with the urgency of recognition, with the calm of someone noting the presence of something they had seen before or had been expecting to see. Her gaze moved from the tube to Lira's face. A question was present in it, not a demand, an opening. Lira's hand went to the tube before she had consciously decided to do anything. She unclipped the clasp and drew the map out, unrolling it carefully, holding it between both hands at the angle that caught the most of the valley's even light. The woman looked at the map. She looked at it the way she had looked at the water in the basin, thoroughly, without urgency. Her eyes moved across it in a pattern that was not random. She was not reading it the way a newcomer read it, discovering information in sequence. She was confirming something, moving across specific points in a specific order, the way a person checked the parts of something familiar to verify it was intact. Her gaze stopped at the small leaf in the lower right corner. She did not touch it. She looked at it for longer than she had looked at anything else on the map. Something shifted in her expression, very slight, the kind of shift that happened in the muscles around the eyes rather than in the mouth, the kind that had no name in any emotional vocabulary Lira knew because it was too specific to have acquired one. Not grief, not joy. Something quieter than either. Something that had been lived past the point where either word applied. Lira held the map steadily. The woman reached out and touched the margin beside the leaf. Not the leaf itself, the blank paper beside it. One fingertip resting on the paper for a moment. Then she lowered her hand. She looked at Lira. Lira looked back. She was aware, in the way you were aware of your own heartbeat, when the surrounding noise dropped below a certain level, that she was breathing very carefully. that she was trying not to do anything abrupt, that she wanted, with a sincerity that surprised her, to be exactly as still as this woman was asking her to be without asking. The woman turned. She walked away from the basin along the cliff face, back in the direction they had come from, but at a different angle, cutting diagonally toward the valley floor rather than following the channel's path. She walked 10 steps and then paused, half-turned, not looking back directly, looking at a point beside them, the way people looked when they wanted to indicate direction without making it an instruction. Then she continued walking. Cael picked up the bay's rein. Lira rolled the map and clicked the tube closed. Fen was already turned in the right direction, as if she had understood something from the extended breathing of palms that the two of them were still working out. They followed. The diagonal path descended more steeply than the one they had arrived by, through a section of the valley floor where the ferns gave way to ground cover so low and so dense it was nearly a solid surface, a dark green that absorbed light without returning it, soft underfoot in a way that muffled the sound of their steps almost entirely. The horses moved through it silently. Even the bay, who was not a quiet horse, produced no sound. Lira looked back at their path through the ground cover and could see for a moment the passage they had made. A slight compression, a slight difference in the surface, and then, as she watched, the ground cover slowly resumed, the individual plants extending back into the space, unhurried, until nothing indicated anyone had passed. Ahead, through a gap in the elder trees, a broader space opened. The valley floor was wider here, and the light had the quality of a room in which all the windows faced the same direction, specific rather than isotropic, coming from the gap in the canopy above this clearing where the trees had been arranged, or had grown, or had been guided to grow, in a circle wide enough that a portion of sky was visible. Not much sky, a circle of it, grey-white and close, the clouds moving slowly across it, but real sky, the first she had seen since the descent. In the clearing, a stone table, flat-topped, waist-high, broad enough for 4 people to work at comfortably. Its surface was worn in the center to a smoothness that matched the doorway thresholds, the record of use, long use. The stone made soft by the repeated contact of hands and materials and the daily life of people working. Around it, stone seating, low and without backs, each piece sized differently, as if they had been found rather than made, and placed where they were most useful. At the table's center, a vessel similar to the one the woman had used at the basin, larger, containing something that was not water, darker, warmer looking, producing a faint trace of steam in the valley's cool air. The woman stood beside the table. She looked at Cael and Lira with the same unhurried attention she had given the map. Then she sat on the stone nearest the table, crossing her ankles, resting her worked hands on her knees, entirely settled. She looked at the 2 remaining stones on the other side of the table. Lira tied Fen to a low branch. Fen immediately dropped her head to investigate the ground cover and sat down. The stone was cold through her coat and slightly damp and solid in a way that communicated considerable age. She sat on it the way you sat in very old places, with the awareness of everyone who had sat there before you. Cael sat beside her. He untied the neck of his coat and rested his hands on the table. After a moment, he pressed his palm to the stone's surface in the gesture she recognized from the soil and from the doorway threshold. Reading it, taking its information. The woman reached across and set a second vessel in front of them, smaller than the one at the center, and filled it from the large one with a tipping motion, so practiced it did not spill a drop. The liquid was the color of deep amber, darker than tea, producing a warmth that Lira felt on her face before she touched the vessel. She brought it to her lips. It tasted of something roasted, something green, and something she could not identify. An undertone that was neither sweet nor bitter, but existed in the register between them. It was very good. It was the kind of thing that tasted like it had been made by the same hands for a very long time, and those hands had never stopped refining it. She held the vessel in both hands and let the warmth move through her palms. The woman was drinking from her own vessel. She was looking at the gap in the canopy, at the slow movement of clouds across the circle of sky. She was entirely at ease in the specific way of people who did not experience the presence of others as something requiring management. Above them, in the gap of sky, a bird crossed. Small, quick, gone. The sound of the water continued its three registers, rearranged again from this position, the low resonance most present here, where the wide channel curved nearest to the clearing. Nothing was explained. Nothing needed to be. The valley held them in its gathered quiet. The stone table between them, like something that had been waiting for this specific use, and the warmth of the vessel in Lira's hands moved slowly up her arms and into the rest of her, and she did not ask where they were, or what this place was called, or who this woman was, because all of that would come, or it would not, and the amber liquid was extraordinary, and the air was cold and clean, and outside the circle of sky the clouds continued their slow, untroubled passage. Cael set down his vessel. He reached into his coat pocket and drew out his journal, the worn one, the one for pressing leaves, and opened it to the back pages where he kept the loose ones, the recent ones not yet pressed flat. He set one on the table between himself and the woman, a leaf from the forest above, collected from the path, broad and five-lobed, dark green, still carrying its moisture. He set it on the stone and left it there. The woman looked at it. She looked at it for a long time. Then she looked at him with the expression Lira had seen at the map's corner. Past grief, past joy, the quiet on the other side of a very long time. She reached out and placed one fingertip on the leaf, the same gesture she had used on the map's margin, touching the space beside the thing rather than the thing itself. Then she withdrew her hand and picked up her vessel again and looked at the sky, and the three registers of water continued below them, and the stone table held them all in the specific warmth of a place that had been doing exactly this for 600 years.